Baby Venice has no idea how special she is. This child, born in Manila, Philippines today, has become the 8th billion human being. There she is. She is now in a special league. It's a milestone for humanity. We've survived and thrived. But population is a double-edged sword. For several decades, the fear has been that humans will overrun the earth. There are too many of us and not enough resources. While that fear still exists, it's being replaced with a future where there aren't enough children being born and an aging society that finds it difficult to fend for itself. Let's begin with what's happened today. The United Nations today declared that humans have crossed 8 billion. We've grown from 7 billion to 8 billion in just the last 11 years. But the next billion will be much slower. It will be 15 years before we hit 9 billion and another 21 before we hit 10 billion. India is going to hit its own milestone next year by overtaking China in 2023 to become the world's most populous nation. So while 8 billion may sound like a lot, the true picture is that we are slowing down in the rate at which we grow the population. This is clear when you see the trends. Fewer children being born, people living longer, women living longer than men, 2 pandemics in this time, pandemic and of course COVID, and the population centers that are shifting. It will soon be India that has the largest population. Now, for India, is this good news or bad news? Population is often a hot debate for us. Hum do, hamare do has been the slogan, and it seems to be working. The fertility rate from 2.2 in 2015-16 to 2 by 2021. That's the drop. What that means is that on an average, Indian women are having 2 children. This actually points to a trend of a slowdown. Look at the births per women, which has gone down the world over. And of course, in India, it's been even slower because it's below the replacement rate of 2.1. A replacement rate literally means as many people born as are dying. So far, we have an average age of 28.7 in India, 28.7 years. It's younger than China's 28.6 years and Japan's 48.6 years. We will remain the youngest nation till 2030, and then that trend shifts. So is that good news? Not necessarily. Aging population comes with its own concerns. A shrinking workforce, higher labor costs, need for advanced health care, an increased burden on the state, because after all, who is going to take that medical expense of an aging population? It will lead to an economic slowdown. There aren't enough young people to work, and there will be higher tax burden for those who can work and are in the working age. So what should be the way forward? Should we be looking at controlling population, or should we go the Elon Musk way, where he believes more the merrier? To speak on this, I'm joined today by Swaminathan Iyer, consulting editor at the Economic Times, Dr. T.V. Sekar, professor at the International Institute of Population Sciences, joins me today on the show. I'm speaking with Poonam Matreja, ED Population Foundation of India, Dr. Ishwar Gilada, Secretary General, Organized Medicine Academic Guild, is joining me today. And I'm also speaking with Debi Goenka, Executive Trustee, Conservation Action Trust. Welcome to all of you, and thank you so much for speaking with us today. Let me begin with you, Dr. Gilada, since I can see you there. What is your take on this 8 billion figure, considering that this is such a contentious debate in our country as well?
Billion has been achieved after many years. It took a long time, and it is one of the greatest achievements of mankind. Don't consider population as a burden. Consider this as an opportunity and as a strength. And that was also a slogan given by our ex-Prime Minister Indira Gandhi at that time. I remember in 1981, when our birth rate was 40 per 1,000 and death rate was 18 per 1,000, our growth rate was 2. We have come a long way. It is now 18.2 birth rate and 7.3 death rate. And this is 1.1. So what we are seeing, not only in India, globally, is a demographic transition. High birth, high death rate to low birth and low death rate. And this has been well achieved. When we look at India, we are naturally more bothered about our own country. When we look at India, almost 30 years back, we were always talking about roti kapda makan. Then after another 10 years, we started about Bijli Sadak Pani. Now we started talking about education and health. So we have also moved a long way. So long as we are able to look after population for their education, health, well-being, safe sanitation, safe water supply, I don't think population can be burdened. We should engage them gainfully. The problem will be if the population goes down further, particularly in young people, then we'll have an aging population, and aging population will have their own problems, age-related problem, cancers, because cancers are only after 60 years of age, lifestyle diseases, environmental problem, about the problems of pollution and some kind of adulteration in food and water. That will create problem, and that we see in most of the European countries where
Let me go to
there is a
Debi
poor aging
Goenka.
population.
Yes, Dr. Gilada. It's a double-edged sword. Debi Goenka, from the Indian perspective, we're going to become the most populous nation in the world by next year. What does that really mean?
The real issue is not the number of people on the planet, but how much each individual consumes. And though India may become the most populous country a few decades down the line, our per capita consumption is perhaps much less than the so-called developed world, and very low in terms of what is used now for measuring is per capita carbon emission. So I think worldwide the experience has been that the poorer people consume less, and because India is a poor country, I don't think the burden that the Indian population is going to place on the global resources is going to be a very significant factor. I think it's really something that we have to look at in the future, where people who are consuming more in the so-called developed countries have to cut down their consumption patterns and allow us the space to grow our population to meet with our requirements in terms of all the luxuries that the Western countries today enjoy. But having said that, in terms of the landmass of the country and the population that the country will have, it is actually going to put a lot of pressure on our resources. And we will also have to make sure that whatever development that we are planning for the future will be sustainable and will not put such a burden on the forest and natural resources that we will have problem perpetuity in future.
That,
So we
Mr.
have to be
Goenka,
very
clearly we
careful
are
about
going to
the
be
model
doing
of
that.
development.
Yes, obviously we will be doing that. That seems to be, the issue that we consume resources at such a quick rate. I have Swaminathan Iyer with me as well. Swami sir, great to have you on the show. You are one of those people who is unabashedly welcoming the 8 billion and counting. Why is that? When people are so worried that we're consuming faster than we can afford to.
This is the constant refrain I've heard from the pessimists for the last 50, 60 years. They keep saying we're going to run out of this, we're going to run out of that. And yet there are any number of studies who show that actually resources are more abundant than they ever have been in history. There was a great bet taken between Paul Ehrlich, I remember, and Julian Simon, that in 10 years, all the commodity prices will go up. They didn't go up. Not only that, if you measure prices not in absolute terms, but in terms of the hours of work taken to earn it, things have got cheaper and cheaper, more and more abundant. The key resource that we need is the human ingenuity. If human ingenuity is there, what appears to be some scarcity here will always be overcome. If something temporarily becomes scarce, that will induce more investment and a search for alternatives. That increases the supply, and then the shortage is replaced by abundance. We have seen that happening, and there I'm quite sure it will continue. Beyond that, a country with more people, as far as I'm concerned, it should not be having some kind of central planning of somebody who is a great fellow determining what the population should be. Individuals should be free to have as many children as they want. The outcomes we can adjust. Whether our population goes up by another 100 million or down another 100 million, it is not a critical issue. What is critical, as I said, the most important resource is human capital, the human ingenuity. Are we educating our people? Are we educating them
but
to
Swami,
make
already all of the humans which are already there, are they getting the same kind of resources that they should? Aren't resources running out? Isn't food running out? Isn't water running out?
Nothing runs out. The law of conservation of matter in physics is elementary. I learned at school. Nothing is created or destroyed. It merely changes shape. Please, I mean, it's an elementary thing we were taught in physics back when I was 11 or 12 years old. Things are not destroyed. Water can change shape. It remains the same. An atom of carbon can change shape. It can go from here to there. With ingenuity, you can always ensure there is enough. And the fact is, despite scares over the last 50, 60 years, starting with the Club of Rome in 1972 saying we're going to run out of everything, actual abundance is larger than ever because the most important resource is human ingenuity. As long as we are able to educate our people, as long as we are able to innovate, there will be no problem in assuring enough. And let's be clear, the way things are going, it is entirely possible to have more and more GDP with less and less consumption of certain commodities. That's what has been happening. We are becoming a service-intensive economy, not only India, the world over. So a rise in GDP does not mean that more resources are being consumed. And please, as I said, things don't disappear. If I'm using a certain amount of aluminum, it doesn't disappear. It's recycled.
Swami is talking about basic physics. Then why all the hue and cry and fear at COP27, at G20? We should be celebrating the fact that there are more and more of us. Poonam Matreja?
Absolutely. We should welcome as many children as are destined to come to the world. And I would like to say that the fear and population scare and population bomb is, as Swami said, a very old phenomena which has been proved wrong. And the second reason it's being pitted against population is the fact that the population of the planet, and there is global evidence that shows that small proportion of the world's population and people consume almost 10% of the people consume most of the resources and are responsible for half of all global emissions. So it's a very, very smart and thought-through strategy for a long time to pit environment against population and go against population numbers without recognizing the fact that the numbers are a huge resource. And India has this huge opportunity where we have at least 2 decades for benefiting from the population demographic dividend, as economists call it, and demographers. And if we invest in our young people, and we invest in their education, we invest in skilling, we could benefit tremendously from economic growth. Will be faster, better as Ireland and other countries.
So, you know, it seems like we have changed our tune as a people. Dr. Shekhar, let me come to Dr. T.V. Shekhar. We seem to have changed tune as a people for the longest time, and let me bring this in the Indian context. The bane and the core of all of our problems was supposed to be our population, right? It's a poor country because there's so many of us. There's a lack of infrastructure because there's so many of us. There's not enough access to education and government service because how can the government provide for so many people? There's overcrowding because there's so many of us. So what has changed now?
I think it is both an opportunity as well as challenge for India. Of course, we have done tremendously well. If you look at the life expectancy in 1950s or 40s, it was around 30, 35 years. Now we are almost double that, around 70 years. It's a remarkable achievement. And we have brought down the fertility. It was on an average, it was 5 to 6 children per woman. Now it has come down to the latest data indicates that around 2 children per woman. It's a remarkable achievement in a country, in a democratic country with a voluntary family planning program. But this also gives us some idea about, it's an opportunity. We have a large young workforce, what we call it as the demographic dividend, but we need to address this in a more serious manner. We need to educate them. We need to give them enough training and job opportunities. Then only we will be able to reap the so-called demographic dividend or demographic bonus. So it's a big challenge. On the other side, you can also see a growing elderly population in India. You know, last census showed our elderly population or the senior citizens something like 100 million. By 2050, according to the projections, it will be something like 320 million elderly population in our country. It's going to be a big challenge. The surveys carried out by our institute, the International Institute for Population Sciences, the longitudinal aging study in India, is a nationally representative survey of older adults, and it clearly indicated that large number of elderly are not getting any social security support. Even among the BPL households, only 1/4 of the poor elderly are getting some old age pension. And that is the case with many other benefits. Health insurance coverage is only 12% among the elderly population. And so if you look at the health dimension of that, there is an increased disease burden. It is shifting from the children to the elderly population. Nearly 35% of the elderly have cardiovascular diseases. Around 15 to 20% of India's elderly are diabetic, and large number of them are other chronic diseases, multi-morbid conditions. Many of them are impaired and disabled.
So that's the thing. This is a very important point. So we're living longer, we're having less kids, and we don't know who's going to take care of this aging population. So, put that in context for us, Swaminathan Iyer. There was a PIL recently in the Supreme Court saying, please enforce the two-child policy in India. There is constantly in India a debate about population, and it often takes a communal color for some reason. Everyone's worried there are too many people. But it seems the problem will be if there are too many people who are old and not enough people who are young.
No, first I would say that for the Supreme Court to be getting into how many people, how many children we would have, it is none of the Supreme Court's business. It's up to individuals to decide. There is no such thing as a country deciding. There is no such thing as enforcing a two-child policy. This is not an autocracy where some government or some court decides, right? It may be the opinion of the Supreme Court that there are too many people. All I can say is they've been sleeping for too long. The idea that population is a problem is so obsolete. For at least 20 years, I mean, they should have surely heard of the phrase demographic dividend. If they haven't, I'm willing to sit down with a little book and explain to them. But I'm astonished that Supreme Court judges still sit around in this old thing about, population a problem. How do you enforce a two-child policy? These are not areas where the court should be getting into at all.
Okay. Dr. Gilada, the issues of an aging population, do you think that needs to be the key focus over here? We're trying to really turn the whole conversation on its head, right? So far, the conversation has been, don't be in a rush to increase the number of children born. Everyone here seems to agree that you have to work in the opposite direction. You have to have more kids. Everyone seems to be on the Elon Musk path. Do you agree with that point of view? Only Debi Goenka is saying no.
No, if there was a policy of, if there was a policy of two, hum do, hamare do, at my home, I would not have been born. I'm third child. We are 8 brothers and sisters. So it doesn't matter how many of us are there. We had a good quality of life, though we had a small earning and small home. So it depends on how you rear children, how you bring them out. I also wanted to defy the policy of hum do, hamare do in myself. And my wife did not cooperate with me. I have 2 daughters. Actually, that was for to defying that male child dominance. I wanted to have all 3 daughters. I have 2 daughters. So basically, how you rear the child. The problem is currently the imbalance. Those which are poor, they have more children. Those which are uneducated, they have more children. Those which are not socially enlightened, they have more children. And those which are
no, but it's the other way around. It's the other way around. People are rich. People are richer when they don't have to pay to raise more children.
So basically, what your first question was that if the population is growing, what are the problems? Yes, there are going to be problems. So we should be taking precautionary measures. And you look at when India was independent, we had only 50,000 doctors in the country. Today we have 12,50,000 MBBS and 3,50,000 postgraduate
No,
doctors.
but what is the
And so
proportion? No, but I don't think the
proportion,
absolute
no,
number of
Tamanna,
doctors is what
proportion
we should
was,
look at. Proportion
yeah,
per population is what we should
I
look
know.
at.
And Tamanna, in 1981, it was one doctor for 10,000 people, and our goal was one doctor for 5,000 people. Today we have one doctor for 1,000 people. There may be some imbalance between urban and rural, primary care, secondary care, and tertiary care, tribal and non-tribal, but that can be taken care of with proper planning.
Okay.
If we have a proper planning,
Debi Goenka does not agree. Debi Goenka is saying that we should not keep having more children. At the end of the day, that's what it comes down to. 8 billion, we're going to slow down the pace to which we get to 9 billion. India is going to top the list of populous countries in the next few months, 2023. So really, we will be spearheading the direction in which the global population grows. We have a very, very key role. So in our context, should we look at growing or stemming the growth of population? Debi Goenka.
Tamanna, I think one factor that we haven't discussed is what is happening to our planet today. And we are assuming that the population will increase or decrease in the same manner in which it has been over the past several decades. And the projections that are being made for the next 4 decades will hold true. But if you look at climate change, which is confronting us, staring at the face, we're talking of a temperature degree rise of 2 degrees or 2.5 degrees over the next 20 years. It means the question is how much of the existing population is going to survive these kind of changes. If you talk about sea level rise, all the populous cities in the world are mainly coastal cities. How many of these cities are going to survive a sea level rise of 15 to 20 feet over the next 30, 40 years, which is what is predicted? These are all imponderables that we don't seem to have answers to. And in any case, the world's resources are finite. You can change it from one form to another. And that is what we are doing. We have too much carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. We have too much water now in the oceans. We have made most of the fresh water undrinkable because of uncontrolled pollution and so on and so forth. So it's all very well saying that you cannot destroy or create matter and it is finite, but it is finite. And we are actually making sure that whatever resources we started off with are being made unusable because of our careless lack of concern for the environment. So keeping all this in mind, we have to look critically at which way we want to go. And we have to be very careful in which direction we are planning to grow also.
So, we also have to understand when we talk about global trends and overall trends of an aging population, slower growth rates, people living longer. Poonam Matreja, I'm coming to you with this question. We talk about it on global averages. Let's do a reality check in the context of India. Are most of the children being born getting the right nutrition, the right opportunities? If most kids being born are in poorer sections of society, how are we ensuring that they have the same chance? Isn't that the way we have to address India's population?
See, that in itself is an important issue, educating all our children and giving high quality, good quality education to all our children. But Tamanna, the point I want to make in response to you is that India has not planned for its population. IIPS, where the NFHS surveys are done, and India's data, we've had very good demographic data in India, and we've used population as an excuse, population explosion as an excuse to not do the right planning and the right thing and plan for the number of babies, children that we have who need education, who need health, who need jobs as they grow up. There is a huge population in India which does not wish to have more than 2 children. And that is what the NFHS data shows. The average in India is people want close to 2 children. It's 1.8, in fact, if you look at an average. And this unwanted fertility, which is 10% today and was 20% until a decade ago, if we were to actually provide family planning services, good quality universal services to all women, we increase the choice women need, we educate women. It's not only about poverty. It is about education. An educated girl who has class 12 education is likely to have 2 or less than 2 children, while an average a girl who's not educated has 3 or 4 children. So therefore, we need to educate. Education is a magic contraceptive pill. And second, let's deal with the issues of unwanted fertility. And that happens when women want to have fewer children and don't have either agency or empowerment, or do not have access to family planning services. Definitely, stabilization is a good goal.
So there seems to be a bit of a conundrum here. You want more and more Indian girls to have children later. We want to, in fact, increase the marriageable age. We want them to have more education. That's going to lead to a slowing down of population. On the other hand, you have those who are worried that the slower the population grows, the worse it is for humanity, demographic dividend, etc. Swami, what about that conundrum?
Look, I see no problem. There are some people who seem to think, oh my God, there are too many people. Oh my God, there are not enough resources. Both of those statements are false. As I said, human beings themselves are the resource. If human beings themselves are the greatest resource, how can more human beings mean a shortage of resources? It's a complete misunderstanding of what resources really are. As I said, to me, the important thing is, first, people must have a free choice on how many children to have. Secondly, you as a government should be having appropriate policies to deal with all resources, including human resources, including pollution, including carbon, on all the various issues. If you just follow sensible policies, there is no issue that cannot be tackled. As things happen, temporary shortages, temporary problems will arise. With human ingenuity, we can check them. Do we not know what to do about, for instance, the current problem on the carbon? We know the answers. Already we have a situation where renewable energy has become cheaper than coal-based energy. You're halfway there. Already we have a situation where an electric scooter is becoming almost as cheap as a conventional scooter. So with ingenuity, with a little bit of effort here and there, is it possible to solve these problems? It is very easy to solve the problem. The only question is, if you are sufficiently determined to have an appropriate policy, there is no problem.
My point was not so much about resources as far as the policy conundrum. The reason in large parts of the world that the population is declining is because as more and more women get educated, they have more opportunities, they're perhaps not choosing to become, vehicles to make more people or make more babies from a young age. Like Poonam Matreja said, female education is the best contraceptive and the best way to slow down population. So we want to do that. We want to empower more women, but we're also afraid that we could lose our demographic dividend. Don't you see the policy conundrum there?
We will manage both ways, frankly. I mean, whether your population growth rate, whether the fertility rate is 2.3 or 1.8, both of those situations are situations which you can cope with. You are entirely right in saying that when you have this decrease, you get a temporary demographic dividend, which then disappears. It happens everywhere. But beyond that, the important thing is freedom of choice and having proper policies to deal with your resources. If you deal with those two, there is no real problem. When you say that what will happen if the society is aging, you can take care of it. The simple thing is there was a time when everybody retired at the age of 58. I am 80 years old and I'm happy to tell you I'm still employed, I'm still getting a salary. So, aging ceases to be a problem if the same resources are fruitfully utilized. I'm happy to put myself forward as one example. So as the aging takes place, the age at which people can productively work has gone up from 58, 60, 65. In my case, at the age of 80, I'm still working. So
Swami, you are an inspiration.
Not worry about aging.
Swami, you are an inspiration to all. But you're crashing the dreams of those who are hoping to retire early because they simply won't be able to afford it. That's going to be the issue. As we have an aging population. Mr. Shekhar, I want to come to you in the context of India. As a leader in population, we're going to be the most populous nation in the world. What kind of a role will we play as large parts of the world see a decline in population. Where does that position India, Dr. Shekhar?
Even in India, the population is declining. We should understand.
Yes.
After 1960s onwards, we are gradually and slowly declining. And we also have some lessons to learn from other countries. For example, China. China introduced very strongly the one-child policy. And it had a lot of negative implications. Population went down drastically. A skewed sex ratio resulted from that. Now the Chinese government want to reverse the policy. Last 5 years trying their hard to increase the population. It is not working. That is the case with many European countries. They are giving many incentives, many programs to improve, couple to have more children, but that is not really working. So we need not much worry about the population is coming down. There is no doubt in that. The fertility rate among different social groups, communities, different states, it is also narrowing down. The differences are narrowing down. So we are very much on a path to the population. We have already reached the replacement level, fertility national level. Few states are still having a little higher fertility, but we are very much on that path to a proper population stabilization. So the question now we need to ask is whether we have a overpopulation or we have a less population. The question is, how are we going to sustain the existing population? Are we in a position to provide the basic necessities which are required, whether it is education, healthcare, skills, employment, and the social security benefit for the large chunk of the elderly population? So these are some of the issues we need to discuss, rather than deviating from the issue whether we are overpopulated, whether we need a government population policy or not. If you empower our people with social and economic empowerment and provide the appropriate family planning services, it is very clear, and all over the world it is an evidence that people will automatically come forward and accept family planning program. So even
no, but
now,
Dr. Shekhar, that's exactly my question. Do we want to propagate family planning program beyond a point? If our population is declining, if after 2030 we start declining?
In fact, I argue that we have to strengthen our family planning program. Why? Even the latest surveys very clearly indicated that around 10% of the couple want to use contraception, but they are not using. There is an unmet need for family planning. If you are able to provide that services to them, there are more and more people ready to use family planning methods and bring down the fertility. So we need to have a more comprehensive family planning program, reach out to the communities and areas and remote areas where the services are not available, bring them to this program. That is what is required. So automatically what we talk about, the unwanted fertility will come down, and more couple will automatically willing to accept the two-child norm. We don't need a law or a rule or a strict implementation of that. With the development and with the programs, automatically we are able to bring down. Long back we said development is the best contraception, and that is really true. If you are able to bring a certain standard of living to the people, automatically the evidence from all over the world. If you look at any country in the world, you can see that the fertility has gone down.
That's the path we're on. But you know, India seems to be in that sweet spot where we haven't, unlike China, clamped down on people with policy. We've let it take its course. So we seem to be in this sweet spot with an average age of about 28 years. Can we make the most of that demographic dividend? Continues to be the question. We have maybe 2 or 3 decades to make the most of it.